There's a lot of ideas out there about who God is. What's he like? What's he want? What's he doing? Why is he doing what he's doing? You ask 10 people and you'll get 10 different opinions. God tells us all about him in the scriptures, the Bible. But because the Bible's written to insiders for insiders, it's sometimes hard for outsiders to make sense of it all. God has a complicated character, just like you and I do, because we reflect him. But let me tell you a bit about who God is by telling you the story of a guy named Hosea. Hosea lived a long time ago in a very different place, but not in circumstances much different from ours. His country was prospering. Their king was an aggressive militarist who was a religious hypocrite. The wealthy were very wealthy, and they preyed on the poor. The poor were very poor. They had no tools to fight back. It was a selfish and really broken society. And these people were supposed to be God's people. And this is what's going on. So God isn't happy. And so God said he'd punish his country for their sins. But first, he left them with something more than just his righteous anger. He told them a story, a lived-out parable about another aspect of his character. He told Hosea to marry a woman who he knew slept around, a woman who God knew would break Hosea's heart. And so he did. Hosea married her. They had kids. And guess what? She did break his heart because she walked out on all of them. And God told Hosea, that's you guys. That's what my people have done to me. He made us. He owns us. And that's what we've done to him. The story of reality is that we are all, each of us, we've all walked away from God by not pledging allegiance to him as our king, giving him our minds, our hearts, our trust, our allegiance. That's why his son, the king, left heaven to come here. We'll never come to him, so he came to us. He obeyed God's laws for us. He suffered and died for our crimes in our place. He gave his life as a ransom payment to Satan, our kidnapper, so we'd be set free. And then 3 days later, Jesus took that ransom back by rising from the dead, tricking Satan and springing a trap that's given him a fatal wound. Jesus defeated Satan, giving us the victory if we follow him. And we do that by pledging allegiance to him as our king. And as a preview, over 700 years before Jesus came and lived and died, God gives us a preview of his love and mercy by the lived out parable of Hosea and his faithless wife. God says, I'm the husband who married you knowing what you are, and you're the wife who walked out on me and my love. You're the adulterer who's walked away, and I'm the guy who's standing here at the front door watching you leave, watching you pull out of the driveway. Now, if you were Hosea, what would you do? What have you done? What would you feel? What would you think? Consider the hurt, the pain, the betrayal. Is there a treachery worse than when a spouse cheats? Is there a hurt that's deeper, that's more immediately painful and deeper than that? God knows how much this kind of betrayal hurts. That's why he reaches for this exact analogy through the lived out story of Hosea. So what does God do when we walk out on him? Which is what all of us do the moment we're born. He goes after us, not to kidnap us, not to grab us, not to drag us back to him kicking and screaming, but he goes after us to convince us to come back home with him. He wins our hearts back. He says he'll betroth us to him forever in righteousness, justice, holiness, and love. In fact, he actually tells Hosea, go after your wife and win her back. And we naturally think, no way, it's over. I would never do that, never. And God says, that's right, but I will do that. And that's how deep my love is for my people. Now do you get who I am? Now do you see this bit of my character for what it really is? And so when we hear Jesus say these words to Nicodemus, they mean something more now than they would have a few minutes ago. In John chapter 3, verses 16 and 17, we read, God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that everyone who has faith in him may not perish, but have eternal life. It was not to judge the world that God sent his Son into the world, but that through him the world might be saved. This is who God is. It isn't all God is, but it's a big part of it. He's the God who loves us despite ourselves. He's the God who pursues us even when we don't want him. He's the God who's gathering a people to be a community, a family, to be in relationship with him. He's the God who wants to give himself just because he can. He's the God who is love itself. He's the God who says we were made for him and will only find peace and true belonging when we're in relationship with him. Do that by pledging allegiance to his Son, Jesus Christ, the King. Join his family and spend your life learning more about that love as one of his children.